Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we'll be doing more of A Testament of Hope by the writings and speeches of Martin Luther King Jr. Before we jump into this, I just want to say, excuse me if I have a little trouble with enunciation. I just had 2 teeth pulled yesterday, so technically my mouth's still in the healing process, and so it'll take me a little effort here to get this read. But the piece we're going to read today is the last essay of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's the one that the book is named for, A Testament of Hope. The blurb reads, "This essay was published posthumously." Whenever I am asked my opinion of the current state of the civil rights movement, I am forced to pause. It is not easy to describe a crisis so profound that it has caused the most powerful nation in the world to stagger in confusion and bewilderment. Today's problems are so acute because the tragic evasions and defaults of several centuries have accumulated to disaster proportions. The luxury of a leisurely approach to urgent solutions, the ease of gradualism, was forfeited by ignoring the issues for too long. The nation waited until the black man was explosive with fury before stirring itself even to partial concern. Confronted now with the interrelated problems of war, inflation, urban decay, white backlash, and a climate of violence, it is now forced to address itself to race relations and poverty, and it is tragically unprepared. What might once have been a series of separate problems now merge into a social crisis of almost stupefying complexity. I am not sad that black Americans are rebelling. This was not only inevitable, but eminently desirable. Without this magnificent ferment among Negroes, the old evasions and procrastinations would have continued indefinitely. Black men have slammed the door shut on a past of deadening passivity. Except for the Reconstruction years, they have never, in their long history on American soil, struggled with such creativity and courage for their freedom. These are our bright years of emergence. Though they are painful ones, they cannot be avoided. Yet, despite the widening of the stride, history is racing forward so rapidly that the Negroes' inherited and imposed disadvantages slow him down to an infuriating crawl. Lack of white resistance um, lack of education, the dislocations of recent urbanization, and the hardening of white resistance loom as such tormenting roadblocks that the goal sometimes appears not as a fixed point in the future, but as a receding point never to be reached. Still, when doubts emerge, we can remember that only yesterday Negroes were not only grossly exploited, but negated as human beings. They were invisible in their misery, but the sullen and silent slave of 110 years ago, so 110 years ago, an object of scorn at worst, or of pity at best, is today's angry man. He is vibrantly on the move. He is forcing change rather than waiting for it in pathetic futility. To less than 2 decades, in less than 2 decades, he has roared out of slumber to change so many in his life's condition that he may yet find the means to accelerate his march forward and overtake the racing locomotive of history. These words may have an unexpectedly optimistic ring at a time when pessimism is the prevailing mood. People are often surprised to learn that I am an optimist. They know how often I have been jailed, how frequently the days and nights have been filled with frustration and sorrow. How bitter and dangerous are my adversaries. They expect these experiences to harden me to a grim and desperate man. They fail, however, to perceive the sense of affirmation generated by the challenge of embracing struggle and surrounding obstacles. They have no comprehension of the strength that comes from faith in God and man. It is possible for me to falter, but I am profoundly secure in my knowledge that God loves us. He has worked out a design for our future. Man has the capacity to do right as well as wrong, but his history is a path upward, not downward. The path is strewn uh, with the ruins of the empires of tyranny, and each is a monument not merely to man's blunders, but to his capacity to overcome them. While it is a bitter fact that in America in 1968, I am denied equality solely because I am black, yet I am not a chattel slave. Millions of people have fought thousands of battles to enlarge my freedom, restricted as it still is. Progress has been made. This is why I remain an optimist, though I am also a realist about the barriers before us. Why is the issue of equality still so far from solution in America, a nation that professes itself to be democratic, inevitable, hospitable to new ideas, rich, inventive, productive, and awesomely powerful. The problem is so tenacious because, despite its virtues and attributes, America is deeply racist and its democracy is flawed both economically and socially. All too many Americans believe justice will unfold painlessly, or that its absence for black people will be tolerated tranquilly. Justice for black people will not flow into society merely from court decisions, nor from the fountains of political oratory, nor will a few token changes quell the tempestuous yearnings of millions of disadvantaged black people. White America must recognize that justice for black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure of our society. The comfortable, the entrenched, the privileged cannot continue to tremble at the prospect of change in the status quo. Stephen Vincent Benet had a message for both white and black Americans in the title of a story, Freedom is a Hard Bought Thing. When millions of people have been cheated for centuries, restitution is a costly process. Inferior education, poor housing, unemployment, inadequate health care, each is a bitter component of the oppression that has been our heritage. Each will require billions of dollars to correct. Justice so long deferred has accumulated interest, and its cost for this society will be substantial in financial as well as human terms. This fact has been fully grasped because most of the gains of the past decade were obtained at bargain prices. The desegregation of public facilities cost nothing. Neither did the election and appointment of a few black public officials. The price of progress would have been high enough at the best of times, but we are in an agonizing national crisis because a complex of profound problems has intersected in an explosive mixture. The black surge toward freedom has raised justifiable demands for racial justice in our major cities at a time when all the problems of city life have simulated or simultaneously erupted. Schools, transportation, water supply, traffic, and crime would have been municipal agonies whether or not Negroes lived in our cities. The anarchy of an unplanned city growth was destined to confound our confidence. What a unique what is unique to this period is our inability to arrange an order of priorities that promises solutions that are decent and just. Millions of Americans are coming to see that we are fighting an immoral war that costs nearly $30 billion a year, that we are perpetuating racism, that we are tolerating almost 40 million poor during an overflowing material abundance. Yet they remain helpless to end the war, to feed the hungry, to make brotherhood a reality. This has to shake our faith in ourselves. If we look honestly at the realities of our national life, it is clear that we are not marching forward. We are groping and stumbling. We are divided and confused. Our moral values in our spiritual competence sink, even as our material wealth ascends. In these trying circumstances, the Black Revolution is much more than a struggle for the rights of Negroes. It is forcing America to face all its interrelated flaws: racism, poverty, militarism, and materialism. It is exposing evils that are rooted deeply in the whole structure of our society. It reveals systemic rather than superficial flaws and suggests that radical reconstruction of society itself is the real issue to be faced. It is time that we stopped our blithe lip service to the guarantees of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. This fine sentiment, these fine sentiments are embodied in the Declaration of Independence, but that document was always a declaration of intent rather than of reality. There were slaves when it was written. There were still slaves when it was adopted. And to this day, Black Americans have not life, liberty, or the privilege of pursuit of happiness. And millions of poor white Americans are in economic bondage that is scarcely less oppressive. Americans who genuinely treasure our national ideals, who know they are still elusive dreams for all too many, should welcome the stirring of Negro demands. They are shattering the complacency that allowed a multitude of social evils to accumulate. Negro agitation is requiring America to re examine its comforting myths and may yet catalyze the drastic reforms that will save us from social catastrophe. In indicting white America for its ingrained and tenacious racism, I am using the term white to describe the majority, not all who are white. We have found that there are many white people who clearly perceive the justice of the Negro struggle for human dignity. Many of them joined our struggle and displayed heroism no less inspiring than that of Black people. More than a few died by our side. Their memories are cherished and are undimmed by time. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there since, yeah, my ability to properly talk is somewhat hampered by an upper lip that has no backing, as you can see. Ah, So yeah, now I am toothless in front. But Dr. King is pointing out how the structure of the society that exists hurts everyone. Yes, there is a fight for black civil rights who that has still not been realized, but it also can oppress many whites because, you know, a lack of free health care, economic oppression. So, like I said, Dr. King, he was very much for economic rights as well as civil rights. You shouldn't be considered less of a person because you were poor. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I'll see you all in the next episode. Until then, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next episode. Later.